So, time for another Elder Scrolls 6 theory video, and today we're going to be discussing the possible setting of Morrowind, although you probably knew that if you clicked on the video. So anyway, let's have a little chat. So, as you may already be aware, there was already an Elder Scrolls game set in Morrowind, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. It came out in 2002, so I don't know, maybe some of the younger viewers may not know about it, but maybe you should go check that out. It had a very good storyline. Anyway, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind wasn't giving us everything in Morrowind. It was actually only set on the island of Vardenfell, which is kind of the big island in the middle of Morrowind. It'll probably be on the screen right now. We also got an amazing look at Morrowind in, obviously, Elder Scrolls Online. It was very pretty. I'm not actually happy to admit this, but I've been playing an incredible amount of ESO recently. I still think £9 a month's an extortionate price, but I don't really have anything else to do, so God, I'm sad. Anyway, back to the point. So, I'm going to start by telling you a bit about the backstory of Morrowind, because it's very interesting, and of course, Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind affects it greatly, so let's go. Okay, so Morrowind's also known as Dwemerth, Veloth, Resdayn, or Dunmerth, and we all know it has been home to the Dark Elves, or Dunmer. But, gosh, I don't want to do this too deeply, because I could probably make some lore videos out of it, but I'll go loosely into it. Okay, get ready for a very, very brief history on Morrowind and the Dark Elves. Morrowind was originally called Dwemerth, as it was inhabited by the Dwemer, a race of Mer. Eventually, another race of elves turned up called the Chimer, who were Daedra worshippers. Both races got along quite well and even formed what's known as the First Council. But the Dwemer decided that they wanted to become immortal, and they did this by using the Heart of Lorkhan. The Chimer saw this as sacrilege, and under Indrel Nerevar, he's important, he comes into it later, declared war on the Dwemer. One thing led to another, and the Battle of Red Mountain, the Dwemer operated on the Heart of Lorkhan and disappeared. As well as this, Indrel Nerevar, remember him, died. The Heart remained and came into possession of Nerevar's four advisors, Amalexia, Sovasil, and Vivec and Dagoth who decided to commit sacrilege themselves and used the Heart of Lorkhan to give them godlike powers, which, well, one of them was immortality. Now, the Daedric Prince Azura, remember the Chimer are Daedra worshippers, turned up and was furious that the Chimer committed sacrilege against their own gods, and gave them the curse which turned the Chimer into the Dunmer, or Dark Elves. Dagoth actually disappeared for a while, and basically, for the next era or so, the Tribunal ruled over Morrowind very successfully, all of them being immortal, of course, until we get to the events of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind. Oh, wait, spoilers. Okay, so Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, basically you are the reincarnation of Indrel Nerevar, and you come back and basically you have to go and stop Dagoth who's one of the four advisors who got superpowers from the Heart of Lorkhan. Basically, he wants to use an ancient Dwemer weapon to take over Nirn, or Tamriel, I can't remember which one it is. Anyway, basically, you end up stopping him, but one thing leads to another, and you take away the tribunals, the three rulers, so Vivec, Sovasil, and Amalexia. You take away all of their powers, which kind of kills off two of them, and Vivec kind of loses all of his power, and we don't really know what happens to him. So basically, you overthrow the three rulers of Morrowind, leaving it down to the five great houses that we'll talk about in a minute. Now, one little point that I do want to make is actually in Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, you really kind of screw things up, because shortly after the events of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind, the Ministry of Truth, which is basically a giant floating island that was held in place by Vivec's powers, falls. Now, this falling basically creates a chain reaction, which means Red Mountain explodes. Now, Red Mountain's the big volcano. So basically, it's your fault that Red Mountain erupts, and it's your fault that all those people die, but I guess they kind of just overlooked that one. GG reincarnation of Indrel Nerevar. Okay, so now we've loosely gone through the lore, we can start talking about the fun little things that we would see if the next game took place in Morrowind. Okay, so Morrowind is definitely one of the more interesting places in Tamriel. It's got some of the most diverse landscape and it's obviously really, really fun to explore. It's also the largest province on Tamriel, so you can see why the 2002 version of Elder Scrolls 3 Morrowind didn't really have the capability to show us all of Morrowind, but I think if it did come out in a new game, then we'd get to see a lot more of it. It also shares borders with Blackmarsh, Cyrodiil, and Skyrim. So Vardenfell is obviously one of the main features of Morrowind. It's where Elder Scrolls 3 did take place. Its main kind of feature is Red Mountain, which erupted last in the 4th era. It's described as having rocky highlands and coastal wetlands filled with unusual types of flora and fauna. As well as this, it's home to the Ashlands. So, the Ashlands are basically the inhospitable, lands around Red Mountain. It's completely dominated, it's got a dark sky, and there's very little vegetation that grows around there. Of course, it's dominated by old ruins, so Dwemer ruins, Daedric ruins, so it would have some quite cool stuff in. The only people who really live there are Ashlanders. Now, these are basically nomadic tribes who prefer to worship the original Daedric princes, as opposed to the Tribunal, which were worshipped by the rest of Morrowind. Unfortunately, if it's going to take place after the 4th era, the Ashlanders are apparently all gone, because obviously living close to a volcano when it erupts is not recommended. After the 4th era, Solstein is also officially part of Morrowind, but I don't really want to go into too much detail about that, because everyone knows what Morrowind's like. Deshaan is the southern region of Morrowind and is situated between Cyrodiil and Blackmarsh. We'll talk about that a bit more in a minute. It holds the city of Mournhold, which again we'll talk about in a bit. Basically, it's quite a green, luscious area. It's got a lot of fungi forests, which you can know is just like the giant mushrooms. As well as that, in the southwestern parts, there's a lot of swamps because it's kind of connected to Blackmarsh. Another really interesting and diverse part of Morrowind is Stonefalls, which is a region situated on the southwestern inner shoreline of Morrowind. Around here it's a bit of a mishmash of stuff we do again see it in Esso. It's got a huge amount of volcanic crags as it's located near 2 volcanoes, Ash Mountain and the Tormented Spire. That's a really cool volcano name, damn. It's also got a lot of fertile lands and a lot of fungal forests, so a very interesting place, really. Blacklight is the capital city of Morrowind and is very nice and very pretty. It was only actually made the capital city because the original capital city of Mournhold was sacked when Argonians revolted. Now, I'm going to go into the Argonian situation about now. Now, the Dunmer actually kept a lot of slaves, mainly Argonians, some Khajiit, but mainly Argonians, which they used to go and raid Blackmarsh for. They'd then put these slaves to work in the plantations on, the marshy parts of South Morrowind. Of course, this meant that eventually the Argonians led up into a huge rebellion, something called the Anaxiel, which is, believed to be the governing body of Blackmarsh, kind of led a huge offensive against the Dunmer and actually invaded mainland Morrowind, sacking the main city of Mournhold. So, that could definitely come into story somewhere. Of course, it was actually outlawed during the 3rd era, so it really depends when the game would take place, if that would be relevant or not. But I guess grudges would still be held. As well as the landscape of Morrowind have been very diverse, the animals there are no exception. Of course, they have the standard mud crabs and slaughterfish. They also have netches, guar, which are these really kind of weird lizard things. Silk striders, which are basically like giant netches that are kind of ridden and traded. So I think it would be really, really, really interesting to get to see some of those going around. There's other things such as goblins, and of course a lot of Dwemer stuff's happening there. So yeah, Morrowind, there's going to be a lot of kind of Dwemer ruins, so if they did choose to launch the game there, I do almost guarantee it would have something to do with the Dwemer. In fact, I would really be interested in seeing some sort of Dwemer being in the main storyline, because they've kind of been neglected in a lot of the other games, so, that'd be very interesting to see. So, to put into context who's actually ruling over Morrowind after the death of the Tribunal, it's basically ruled by a Grand Council of 5 great houses: House Redrun, House Telvanni, House Sandras, House Indrel, House Dress, and House Alelu. I don't think I'm saying that right. Anyway, basically, these 5 houses have all the power in Morrowind, especially after the Tribunal was defeated. Basically, there was a 6th house as well, House Dagoth, as in Dagoth Ur's house, but that was disbanded. Basically, it would be very interesting because all of these houses differ in great amounts. As well as this, assassination's actually legal in Morrowind. You remember the Morag Tong, maybe from Dragonborn, when they tried to kill the member of House Redrun? That was actually legal. So, yeah, even the politics in Morrowind really do differ from the rest of Tamriel, which, to me, just seems really, really interesting. Another majorly interesting thing that the Morrowind would offer is all the different forms of architecture. For example, House Telvanni, this is just one of the great houses, actually grows their buildings using giant mushrooms with magic. House Indrel Dress, Halelu and Redrun kind of have a more common method by using stones, but their style still differs greatly from all the other places in Tamriel. And House Redrun has a really unique and interesting one, as we saw in the Dragonborn DLC. They actually go and create houses out of emperor crabs, which, that for one thing, I really thought those style of buildings were quite interesting, so I'd love to see different kind of designs. It is still important to remember at this time, in the 4th era, that Morrowind is still part of the Empire, but the Empire's grasp there really is very thin. They've all but abandoned it pretty much, because obviously they're trying to clean up all the issues in Skyrim, Hammerfell's in open rebellion. The Empire's constantly worried about what the Old-Mary Dominion's going to do if they're going to declare war again, because they know they can't win. So basically the Empire's all but abandoned Morrowind, and has kind of left the 5 great houses to deal with all the issues, such as the eruption of Red Mountain. So I would really be quite interested to see if they did take place in the 4th era, where the Empire would fit into it, and if the Old-Mary Dominion will maybe try to be there as well. As well as that, I'd also want to see what the effects from Skyrim have on the mainland of Morrowind, so it would be a really interesting time period to take place in. Of course, it could be set as a prequel to Skyrim, so we could maybe see the Tribunal in power, because I think that would be really interesting, because outside of Elder Scrolls 3, we don't really get to see that much of them. I know we get to see one of the Tribunal, I believe it's Amalexia in Elder Scrolls Online, but apart from that, we don't really get to know that much about them, so I'd really enjoy getting to see some of the Tribunal in power. As well as that, imagine going even further back to maybe the founding of the Tribunal. So, it could be a game where we actually see the Chimer as opposed to the Dunmer, which would be absolutely crazy. As well as that, we may even get to see things such as dwarves, which we don't see in the games, we just see the ruins. I'd be really, really interested in seeing where the Dwemer, what they were actually like, because I think that if they were going to do that sort of a thing in a game, Morrowind would be the perfect one to do it in. So yeah, really, I think that it could be a sequel or a prequel. Morrowind has some of the best potential for storyline, but do I think that it is going to take place in Morrowind? Well, it could do, because Morrowind has a great amount of potential. The one thing I'm worried about is that they may just try to do a revamp of Elder Scrolls 3, which I don't want at all. One, I think if they do go with Morrowind as a setting, I'd want all of Morrowind. I wouldn't just want Vardenfell. And two, I definitely want them to make use of all of the brilliant sources that they have, such as the Dwemer, the Tribunal, the Chimer, the Empire. I think that really, Morrowind has such a diverse story and land that it's just a really, really brilliant setting. So yeah, I'd say if you're going to set a game, then I think that Morrowind would be a pretty good place to set it. Thank you for watching my Elder Scrolls 6 theory video. Please pop down in the comments down below what you think about the next game possibly being set in Morrowind. And if you are interested, then I'm sure I have missed out a few bits and bobs, because there's a lot of lore on Morrowind. So feel free to go and look it up yourself on the wiki. I'll pop the links down in the description below and read about it yourself. I hope you enjoyed the video. Please do like, comment and subscribe, and I'll see you next time.